Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking around for our panel. I know we've got quite the competition going on in the main stage, so I won't take it personally if you guys choose the presidential candidates over us, but we've got a fantastic panel here. My name is Tyler Evans. I'm one of the founders of BTC Inc. I'm excited to be joined by JJ, Greg, and Dan to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin landscape, their focus, how they see the differentiation as our title goes. So I'm going to kick us off with some quick introductions. I'll ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves a little bit about what they do.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg King. I'm the founder and CEO of Osprey Funds. We offer the only competitor to the Grayscale GBTC fund, the Osprey Bitcoin Trust, trades under the ticker OBTC. And charges a much lower management fee. My background is building ETFs. I've launched over 100 ETFs and ETNs in my career at Barclays, Credit Suisse, and a number of other firms. Started investing in Bitcoin in 2013. Good to be here.
Hey everyone, my name is Dan O'Prey. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Bakkt. We're a publicly listed on the New York Stock Exchange Bitcoin and crypto company. Not Bitcoin only, but Bitcoin first, where our focus is. We're a qualified custodian and also on the retail side, a B2B2C platform empowering trading, rewards and payouts for multiple different retail fintechs, neobanks, brokerages. Background, also got into investing in Bitcoin in about 2013. Then I went off on a slight detour into what's commonly referred to as the enterprise blockchain space, co-founded a company called Hyperledger. Then worked at a company called Digital Asset for about 6 years as well, but come back to Bitcoin where my real passion lies.
Hey everyone, I'm JJ Petersen, co-founder of BXB Capital, and we run a quant hedge fund. We started off doing the kimchi arb, moving Bitcoin into Korea, and kind of went full circle to end up in algo trading, and now we're moving towards a Bitcoin first fund with denominations in crypto and returns, sorry, denominations in Bitcoin and returns in Bitcoin.
All right, and so I think it's really interesting. Each of you guys are kind of sitting in different seats where you're interfacing with a very kind of institutional TradFi audience, whether the ETF business or on the fund side. Could you guys maybe talk about and to kind of cut to the chase on the panel here, talk about both the attitude around Bitcoin interfacing with those institutional investors and the differentiation, the pitch for Bitcoin compared to all the wide, sometimes more shiny landscape out there as you're trying to fundraise or as you're building financial products for this audience. And whoever wants to start it here, jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it's interesting. We actually started off by trading a lot of the crypto assets and going towards more family offices and more of like the TradFi world. That was our first fund. And we found that the TradFi world was a bit less interested in active trading in crypto. So we actually kind of came back towards just focusing more on Bitcoin specifically and looking more at the kind of like native Bitcoiners because they just get it more. Like it's still a tough conversation to have with the TradFi world. And I think part of it's we just don't have the right framework yet. We don't have the right terminology. We don't have the right regulation. So we ended up just kind of coming back into more of the native world and going further away from the TradFi world.
Yeah, I'd say it's quite similar. A lot of different views across institutions, right? Obviously, hedge funds, more active traders, they're looking for edge, they're looking for alpha, and so they had been looking for more of the longer tail of coins because you can't charge a lot of management fees on buy Bitcoin and hold it, right?
Right.
You need to show some diversity, some portfolio rebalancing. So historically, that had been, a lot more of the active people were looking towards new coins, ICOs, out there cryptos. But I think particularly over the last year, it has come back, and also for the larger institutions, if you're a pension fund or a nation state, really Bitcoin's the only one you'd be considering, or corporate treasury even. So if you're at size and you're looking to be a long-term holder, then Bitcoin is essentially the only option in the US. But if you're more active trader on a daily basis, then it can skew more altcoins.
And maybe I could ask each of you to unpack what Dan just said a little bit more in terms of Bitcoin being the only option if you have that long-term view. Why is that the case, and why does that resonate with the folks you interface with?
I'll kick that one off quickly. So I think one, it's the safest. It's been around the longest. It's been number one for the entire time crypto has existed. Two, at least in the US, it's the only one that has regulatory clarity between the SEC and the CFTC, that they both agree that it's a commodity. And that is not true for any other cryptocurrency, including Ethereum. So I think those two factors with the longevity, with the regulatory clarity, make it more accessible for larger institutions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we deal with passive investors mostly, right? So these are investors thinking about their portfolio from the perspective of asset allocation, right? So when they look at crypto, they're looking at it as an asset class or a sub-asset class. And so then the question becomes, fees, liquidity, volatility, correlations, things like that. And if you look at the crypto space from an investment point of view, from that perspective, there's a high degree of correlation between Bitcoin and everything else, right? Where Bitcoin kind of goes the rest of the world. But rest of world has a lot less liquidity, a lot more volatility, especially lately. And the fees around products are higher, right? So it really kind of represents the beachhead for an institution to think about a passive allocation. And I mean, it's still, the vast majority of the overall market cap of the whole space anyways.
Right.
So that for that reason, it's just a lot of the conversation is just all about Bitcoin. Not to mention the infrastructure that you were talking about, the way that on-ramps are being built, whether it's funds or exchanges or things, the primary access point is Bitcoin.
I probably have a less intelligent thought on this, which is somebody asked me a couple years ago if I could take any crypto now, but I couldn't sell it for 10 years, what would I take? And the answer is almost everyone would answer it the same way and say Bitcoin. Because if you think that, I don't even know why. It just fundamentally makes sense.
Well, I would say that it's because, Bitcoin is the application of crypto and blockchain technology to the global problem of fiat currencies. Right, and it seems the runaway winner, and this is kind of a winner-take-all type of situation, and therefore, we think you can bet on that long term, and that makes sense. You just go down a notch, and the whole proposition is totally different. You're talking about smart contracts platforms. You're talking about, speedier networks that compromise on security. Like, you have to make a lot more decisions, whereas I feel like, I came into Bitcoin as a result of some dissatisfaction with gold and silver and just trying to figure out what else can I be buying here in this, inflationary monetary environment. And that's how I discovered Bitcoin. Sadly, it was 2013, not 2010, like some of my friends. But, from that perspective, I think it's very understandable once people spend the time. But those technologies can be applied to all kinds of other problems that are just not as straightforward. I think people who are paying attention realize fiat currency has major issues.
Yeah, and I'd also add to that on the sort of longevity point, right? If you look historically, 3 years ago, 6 years ago, 9 years ago, Bitcoin's number one. The top 10 has changed almost entirely. So if you're betting on something, Bitcoin will be around in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. The odds of any of the other top 10 still being there that long are historically, at least, not super high. So I think that's given people a lot of confidence that Bitcoin has the staying power and continues to be the market leader. And then also Bitcoin's, the Bitcoin community always optimize for security. Other platforms make trade-offs, right? So yes, there are others that are faster, they do more, they're cheaper, but they trade off security and decentralization in order to get that. And Bitcoin's persistently, optimizing for security, sets it up well as these things will get attacked more and more over time, but also means that it has that staying power and longevity, and the chances of it having flaws are far, far lower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Greg, you said a couple things that really resonated with us. At BTC Inc., we we used to do some enterprise blockchain stuff, but in 2019 we made the decision to focus kind of entirely on business, and it was really for a couple of those reasons you mentioned. Both the total addressable market of the problem Bitcoin is solving is money, is all value is massive, and money is such a there's such a Schelling point where it's can be a winner take all universal language, which isn't necessarily true of the problems that other chains, other technologies are solving. So that's kind of really what led us to focus back here. To zoom out one step and look at the bigger picture too. We've heard for years, for 5-7 years, that the institutions are coming for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to be where they start. The herd is finally gonna take the time to understand it, start allocating to it. We're sitting here in 2023. Do you guys think that's the case?
No. I mean, so I play golf, right? And you play golf and you hang out and you're talking to guys, and a lot of the guys are a lot older than I am, and I'll talk to them, I'll tell them what I do, and this reaction is always the same. They're like, how's that going? And it's just like, it's the same every time. And it's just like, I'm great, I love it. But I still just, from like on a, I don't know, day-to-day basis, I just don't see it. Everyone's still afraid of it.
Yeah, I would say it was starting. I mean, you're probably better positioned to speak to this than I am, but it was starting and it's still ongoing. But not surprisingly, I would cite two factors. I mean, people are in markets; they're very responsive to gains or losses, right? And in bear market, nobody wants to talk to you. In bull market, they're all like, "Oh yeah, we've got to, we hired some research guys to figure this stuff out," right? And that's kind of how big institutions operate generally. Number one. Number two, thanks a lot SBF and all that crew, right? Because they didn't help things, right? So the whole industry's now your sort of 65-year-old golfers can sort of snicker and laugh and say it's a bunch of kids running, around doing stupid stuff. But look, it's just it's delayed things. I think to me it hasn't fundamentally changed anything, and we just see the current market as really a buying opportunity.
Yeah, I'll follow that up by saying I think people have very short-term memories. And when the whole FTX thing went down, I remember my mom was asking me over Christmas. She's like, "Oh, is your business okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." She's like, "Well, what's going to happen?" I go, "By this time next year, nobody will even remember it." And I truly believe that by the end of this year, the FTX collapse will be a distant memory, and hopefully we're already moving on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, it already almost feels like old news now, right, already. It's already been talked about so much. And we're, 6 months or less on from it. I think, it's about building out the institutional infrastructure. That takes a lot of time for these entities to actually participate in that space. There's the whole regulatory lack of clarity, which is another piece. But large institutions are here, right? CME have their Bitcoin futures. Our majority shareholder, Intercontinental Exchange, ICE, have Bitcoin futures. NASDAQ have launched or are launching a crypto custody business, CBOE Digital. There's lots of institutional entities, Boney and State Street, right, two of the biggest custodian banks in the world are entering this space. So it is getting built out. They are active. They're doing things, most of them in production, live today. And those are the sorts of things that need to get put in place to enable the larger institutional investments, because they're not going to, a sovereign wealth fund is not going to custody with some no-name crypto anarchist custodian that is tweeting at the SEC. They need the grown-ups in the space to come and build that infrastructure so that they can participate.
The problem is, though, they're still using an old school frame of thinking. Like the CME is not trading 24/7, and fundamentally,
right,
with this market, you have the rest of the market trading 24/7. So I mean, we tried to run our algorithms on the CME data, and it just doesn't work. So they still need to adopt a newer framework in order to kind of like bring this forward. Because I'd love to trade there. They're just not there yet.
Besides more time, more infrastructure, do you guys see any big roadblocks or any big challenges to that adoption wave, or we just need to sit back and give it some time?
I think we just need the right words for it all. And this is one of the things I've been saying for a long time. And somebody yesterday is like, Bitcoin's not a cryptocurrency, and then everybody else calls it a cryptocurrency. And I think we can't have the best conversations yet because we don't have the right nomenclature for it. And I think if people can just come up with the right ways to start defining it and putting it into the right buckets, we can start having more productive conversations.
I think, yeah, usage as well, utility is going to be a big factor, right? Right now, it's the digital gold, buy it, hold it, wait, long-term narrative. Bitcoin was designed as peer-to-peer electronic cash, and the internet needs an internet-native way of making payments and moving money, and now we have that with Lightning. Lightning's still relatively early compared to Bitcoin, so there's still a lot more infrastructure that is being built out on that side. But I think once people realize what it's for and for payments, and as have been highlighted recently with the banking failures and crisis, that what with Bitcoin, as a hedge to that, has also been proving out its value over time. Then it becomes less speculation on what could it be and more, okay, this has a use case we can all understand, payments, that's a massive market, and now we know how to model and price it, and it's way underpriced.
I would say the thing that I wish we could wave a magic wand and make go away is just the politicization of the whole thing. Whether it's criticism around the environmental impact or whatever else any politician can kind of use to advance their agenda. In some of these other cryptos, those of us who operate products that have things that aren't Bitcoin are very much in limbo around their status as to whether they're securities or not. Thankfully, that doesn't apply to Bitcoin, which, very much thankfully, because if we were still in that limbo, we wouldn't be where we are now. But I was talking to a friend earlier, and I was like, yeah, they need to clarify some of these things. And he's like, well, actually, with Bitcoin, I just think I'm just rooting for them to do nothing, right? Actually, that would be kind of good. Just stop demonizing it and stop coming at it in different ways and allow things to happen, such as an ETF, for example. That would be great. That would be very helpful to customers.
Such a no-brainer.
I mean, some of these things are not rocket surgery, as my buddy says, but, politicians got to be politicians, I guess.
Well, as our time is ticking down here, I want to look ahead to the future a little bit. You guys want to leave the audience maybe with either something you're excited about, a trend you guys are seeing, where you think the Bitcoin space especially is going over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I already mentioned Lightning, so I'll stick with that one mostly. We have a small Lightning team, starting to build that out and explore for next year and sort of beyond. So Lightning's the big obvious answer. And then broadly, what excites me even more is other things like Lightning, so building other layer 2s or layer 3s and taking some of the free experimentation that's happened with these other cryptos and platforms and rebuilding them in a safe and secure way for use cases that make sense on top of Bitcoin. And I think that will come in time.
I would just like to start seeing people do more with it. And I'm a trader, so the best thing I could think of what to do with Bitcoin is just trade it and try to make more of it. But I love the concept of looking at it more like a digital commodity and something you can use, because I don't think the Incans pulling gold out of the ground were like, oh, we can use this in circuitry in a couple hundred years, right?
Yeah.
So I just challenge people to start looking more at how do we do more with it, and how do we use this great technology to do more.
I think Lightning's really exciting. I think that going into the next year or so, the halvening's exciting. As I mentioned, we deal with passive asset allocators mainly, and it's kind of the boring, just stick with it and asset allocate, dollar cost average. I view this as a pretty good entry point, and our focus is mid to long term, and I really don't see a way that, personally, that things are not much higher in a 5 or 10 year time frame.
Amen. I think we're out of time on that note, but let's give these guys a warm round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.